Hello and welcome to everyone on the line. We're so glad you could join us for today's webinar, Trust Your Supply Chain, How Technology Pioneers Transparency and Traceability. This webinar is part of our Red, White, and What's New in Responsibly Made Fashion series and was organized by the United States Fashion Industry Association, representing brands, retailers, importers, and wholesalers based in the US and doing business globally, as well as our friends at Lenzing. My name is Shannon Brady. I'm the Communications Director at USFIA, and before we get started, I'll go over a few quick technical points. The first is that questions can be submitted at any time during the live presentation. Simply click on the question header on your webinar control panel, type your text into the box, and hit send. Our presenters will address as many questions as possible at the end of the program. And if for some reason we experience a technical difficulty and lose audio, please refer to the chat box for further instructions. As a quick reminder, all attendees will receive a follow-up email later today with a copy of the slide deck and a recording of today's session. Now, without further delay, I'll hand it over to Tricia Carey at Lenzing to get us started.
Thank you, Shannon, and really appreciate the support of USFIA in our Red, White, and What's New series. So today we're going to talk a little bit about transparency and traceability. The fashion industry knows that it needs to change its act in order to clean up what is happening in the industry. But when brands themselves don't know their supply chains, how can they make the necessary strategic changes? Traceability is about mapping your supply chain, and transparency is about knowing how you report your findings. An intimate understanding of your supply chain should be a fundamental requirement for all businesses, and there is technology out there to help you do that. Depending on who you ask, blockchains are either the most important technological innovation since the internet or a solution looking for a problem. In reality, blockchain is in its infancy, so understanding its power or potential is probably similar to understanding its power or potential of the internet back in the mid-1990s. When you hear the word blockchain, you probably think of Bitcoin, the virtual currency that has gone up exponentially in value over the past few years. But while blockchain technology is best known for its use in virtual payments and other financial applications, other uses are starting to be developed across many sectors of the economy, and the fashion industry is already beginning to discover its possibilities. As enthusiasm for its uses in the fashion industry for everything from inventory management to brand protection grows among early adopters, it is also worth pointing out certain pitfalls that come with employing blockchain, which is still largely untested and unregulated. As Peter Smith, co-founder and chief executive of Blockchain, the world's largest software provider for digital currency, explains, essentially it's a way of distributing a source of truth. The question is, can the textile and apparel industry handle the truth? So joining us today for a presentation and discussion is Amit Gautam, who is founder and president of TextileGenesis, and Simeon Nachev, who is value chain manager at Lenzing. At this point, I will pass it over to Amit, who will give us a presentation about TextileGenesis and his unique product that he's developed, which we've been happy to be a part of. And then Simeon and Amit will have a short discussion, and then we'll open up to questions. So Amit, I will pass it over to you.
Thanks, Tricia. I hope everyone, Tricia, can you see the screen just to ensure that it's visible?
Yes, I can see the screen. You're good to go.
Okay, great. So thanks, Tricia, again. And thanks, Shannon, for inviting us for this exciting session. I'm Amit Gautam, CEO and founder of TextileGenesis. We are based out of Hong Kong with our technology development center in India, and recently also have presence in London. So what I would like to achieve in the next basically 20 to 25 minutes is, first of all, give you a quick overview of some of the terms that are used when we talk about traceability in the industry, because blockchain is largely being used for supply chain traceability, and there are a lot of terms that are used which can be confusing at times. The second thing I want to share with you is why transparency and traceability is important in the industry. As Tricia was saying, we don't look at blockchain as a silver bullet. We are not looking to blindly apply it. Our most important question is, which business problem are we solving? And then where can we apply blockchain to best address that problem, right? And maybe there are other digital technologies who can address that problem or parts of that problem better, and we're okay with that, right? So my second focus of the discussion today is why traceability is such an important issue in the industry, and then we go on to how are we solving that problem and some of the work that we're doing in the industry as we speak, right? So let me start straight away. Very briefly, just about us before I go into the content. We are an end-to-end traceability platform for all sustainable fibers, enabled by our award-winning Fibercoins traceability technology. I'll go later into what Fibercoins exactly are, but they have nothing to do with cryptocurrency. So let me state that up front. And our initial focus is on really three main sustainable fibers: wood-based cellulosic fibers, recycled polyester organic wool, and now we're also looking into responsible wool, cashmere, and all other sustainable fibers in the fashion industry. And what we have done is essentially created a platform with a global network of premium and sustainable fiber producers like Lenzing from Austria, Schneider Group from Italy, they're in the wool and cashmere, and working with very leading sustainable brands like H&M, Armed Angels, and very importantly, forming partnership with key industry associations to really drive a systemic change in the industry. So there we are working very closely with Textile Exchange and Fashion for Good. And I'll go later into some of the work we are doing with Textile Exchange. And essentially our technical team, our CTO comes from IBM. So we have set up a very strong technical team to really drive an enterprise level a digital traceability platform for the industry to drive B2B transactions. And last year we filed a patent in US, so it's in actually patent pending status, the Fibercoins traceability part, right? Now, before we start, I would love to ask a very simple question. What do you think is the difference between traceability, transparency, chain of custody, and forensic markers? Yeah. Now, there is no prize for guessing it right. So let me actually break the suspense and move on to the very first element, which is traceability. Now, traceability is the ability to trace the history and application and location of the product or an intermediary as it is moving along the supply chain. So in the fashion industry, as the fiber is converted into yarn, yarn into gray fabric, gray into finished fabric, into garment, tracing that history of the product as it's transformed across the supply chain, that's what traceability is referred to. Now, people sometimes confuse between traceability and transparency. Transparency is the ability to share the traceability data with relevant players in your ecosystem. It could be consumers, it could be suppliers, your investors, employees. Now, it's important to recognize there is no way you can talk about transparency if you do not have traceability into your supply chain, because then there is nothing to share of the traceability data, right? So when we talk about transparency, it's fundamental to first get traceability right, and only then the question of transparency comes into play, right? Then the other term that's used quite often is the chain of custody, which is nothing but as the legal ownership of the product as it's transformed across the supply chain. That's what the chain of custody refers to, the legal ownership of the product. And finally is the forensic markers, which is the ability to physically verify the presence of a fiber of an ingredient at any stage in the textile supply chain, because like Lenzing incorporates a chemical marker or tracer. There are a lot of emerging technologies in that space as well. And forensic markers in a way complement traceability. They do not create traceability per se. They do not create transparency per se, but they enable some of those elements around traceability and transparency. Yeah. Now, the key challenge which we see in the fashion industry is what we call 95% traceability gap. What we mean by that is that top 100 fashion brands, they have set 100% sustainable and traceable fibers target by 2025, some of them by 2030, right? Now, which is great and fantastic. But when you ask the same top 100 fashion brands, 95% of the same top 100 fashion brands have very limited to no visibility across the entire supply chain, right from the start of the fiber origin all the way to retail, right? So only less than 5% of the brands have that visibility. So that's what we call 95% traceability gap, which essentially means that majority or almost all of the industry, the supply chain across beyond tier 1 for a brand, which is a garment maker, is largely a black box. Maybe they have sometimes visibility to tier 2, which is a finished fabric supplier. But when you talk about gray fabric, when you talk about spinning and back to the fiber, it's largely a black box, right? Now, that's the key challenge we are solving at TextileGenesis. And the way we are solving this problem is combining three distinctive innovations. First is we invented Fibercoin technology, which essentially allows a sustainable fiber producer to create digital tokens in direct relation to the physical volume of the fiber produced. So 1 kg of fiber is actually one fiber coin. And what those tokens allows about digitization of physical volume, you control the amount of certified material entering into the network. So you never have more sustainable material. Like sometimes in cashmere, people say there's twice as much cashmere marketed in the world than physically produced. Now that problem you completely eliminate through digitization at the point of origin. And the second thing that Fibercoins does, it creates an electronic chain of custody, eliminating the need for any paper or PDF-based transaction certificates, which is dominant in the industry. Now, the reason we could invent and use Fibercoins very creatively is because of the traceability data protocol that we developed, which is based on GS1 standard. And essentially, that traceability data protocol allows the textile suppliers across the chain to seamlessly share data with each other through upload of a file, right? So it eliminates the need for punching numbers on an application. You just extract data and upload into the system, and the system allows the different players in the supply chain to exchange data. And that's possible because you standardize data definition. And that's where we use the GS1 standard, which is an open standard, a global one for traceability. And we, for the first time, created a fiber to retail traceability standard for the textile industry. And the third is to connect the physical world with the digital world through the fiber forensic audits. If the fiber has a forensic tracer, we can integrate that as part of the history of the fabric article or the yarn article, right? And essentially, we are marker agnostic, so it doesn't matter which tracer is being used. So when you combine those three technologies together, what you do is you create a pretty robust chain of custody solution for the textile industry that creates end-to-end traceability for the fashion industry. Yeah. Now, this is how the platform looks like. It's a web-based platform. It's on a cloud. So, if you have to, if you have suppliers in Bangladesh, in Pakistan, India, Vietnam, Sri Lanka, Turkey, you want to be the suppliers to be able to easily access the system, right? So what you need is just a web browser and internet connection to access the system, because it's delivered via the cloud. And for a brand, for the products they receive, they can see the full transactions across the supply chain. They can see the individual underlying suppliers for the products they receive, right? And this is what we call the traceability map that allows the brands that full visibility, fiber forwards real time. Now, and the second part of our technology is to be able to demonstrate that traceability at the point of sale to a consumer if brand is interested in communicating that story, right? So an app that allows a consumer to scan the barcode and understand the history of the product, what makes it unique, what's the supply chain, And this is where I'm going to share with you a brief video, which basically shows us our app, where as a consumer, you can scan the barcode or enter it data manually. We say scan barcode. And then these are the garments on display at the Hong Kong Fashion Summit. I would scan in one of the garments. And then as a consumer, you can then understand the information about the product, the composition of the garment, what makes it unique. So why is it such a special garment? Breathability, moisture management, and the raw material coming from sustainable wood sources, and the entire supply chain, right? Starting with Tencel in Austria, all the way the whole supply chain. As a consumer, you can click on Know More to understand the underlying certificates. Is it biodegradable and compostable? Is it a bio-based certificate? As a consumer, you can click on Tencel logo, and then it takes you to the website so that you understand, why are you paying $150 for this very nice shirt or a dress and not 20. Yeah? But the point here I want to emphasize that a lot of brands get excited when they look at the story and say, oh, great, let's tell the story about traceability to consumer. And I typically say, look, just hold on the horses, because what's more important is to first get a real good traceability backbone, which means reliable, authentic, verifiable data at scale. And only once you have that traceability, you talk about how do you tell the story towards consumer, right? If you only have traceability for 5% of your product portfolio, 7%, 10%, it's not big enough to talk about traceability towards consumer, because they are very likely to ask, why can I know this much information about this product and I do not know the information, same level of granularity for 90% of the rest of the products, right? So the whole consumer telling part becomes important only when you have created the traceability at scale for a decent proportion of your product line. Yeah. Now, if I take another stab at the same challenge, when we look from the work that we're doing with Textile Exchange, they are an industry standard body which have very widely used standards like GRS for recycled polyester, RWS for responsible wool, RMS for mohair standard, for down standard. One of the challenges they face in their existing chain of custody is the PDF and paper-based transaction certificates across the chain. So what we're doing is we are creating an alternative electronic chain of custody, what we call e-trackage system, that would hopefully allow, the objective is to make it faster, more accurate, and cheaper, both for brands and for supply chain partners to use the system, because the transactions become 100% digital, and you digitize the asset at the point of origin, and therefore significantly improve the traceability across the chain. Yeah. And finally, let me share with some of the work we are doing or recognition that we have from the market. So we recently won the Global Change Awards from H&M Foundation, Accenture, and Swedish Royal Institute of Technology. It's also sometimes called the Nobel Prize in Fashion, and we are the only traceability platform to have won the award since it was started 5 years ago. And we also work very closely with Fashion for Good. We're part of the South Asia Innovation Program, and now working very closely with brands like Kering, Bestseller, and Target on traceability for viscose, but also traceability for recycled polyester, right? These are some of the brands that we work very closely. I already highlighted partnership with Textile Exchange. We also work closely with Canopy to integrate the hot button ranking and Canopy style audits into our system real time as those results are upgraded. With H&M, we have conducted trials with 3 different sustainable fibers for Tencel, for recycled polyester for wool, and Armed Angels, we're in the process of further scaling up along with Lenzing the traceability for the viscose, Ecovero, and for Tencel fibers. Yeah. And another important partnership here is with Schneider Group, where we work closely for wool and cashmere traceability for them. So we're in the process of globally rolling out the system, very closely partnering with Lenzing. Our objective is to sign up 1,000 plus suppliers by 2021, middle of 2021. We've already onboarded close to 130, 150 supply chain partners in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. We are testing the technology in 10 major textile producing countries with 6 leading brands. And essentially, our model is a very simple fixed annual subscription fees. It's almost like a Netflix pricing model, so that you incentivize the usage and you do not tax the usage of the system. Yeah. So with that, Tricia, I would pass it on back to you. Yeah, I think I hope to have created enough excitement for yeah, look forward to questions from the audience. Hello, Tricia, are you still there? Simeon.
Yeah, let me jump here. I was introduced in the beginning, Simeon Nachev, Value Chain Manager for Lenzing AG. First of all, very warm welcome to everyone from very snowy and cold Austria. I'm really excited to be here. And if you ask me what is my role about, the ideal example that I have in mind is this is a prime example of the business model of Lenzing that we go beyond fibers. So for us, it's not only important to sell highly sustainable fibers, but also to have the means to help our supply chain partners and brand and retailers really to differentiate themselves further. And what a better way than a digital one. And you heard about the great technology that TextileGenesis is offering. And for us, this was kind of a no-brainer to be there from the very beginning, from day one. We see this as a unique opportunity to position even stronger our Tencel branded fibers and to really protect the suppliers for getting fake fibers. And let's face it, the textile industry, it's quite an ambiguous one, as Amit showed you, with a little bit visibility. And it's a fair assumption, according to the latest research, is that there is 1/3 fake fibers in circulation. And this is definitely something that we don't want to have with our suppliers. So by having this fiber technology embedded in our Tencel branded fibers, the upgrade was to make it digital, so you have a seamless experience all the way from the fiber to your stores. And here perhaps a question to Amit, very important for everyone. What's the supremacy, or what's the advantage of having a fiber onwards traceability system opposed to garment backwards or brand and retailer backwards?
No, sure, Simeon. So I think the main difference between fiber forwards and garment backwards is, first of all, the reliability of the data that you get into the system, right? So in the garment backwards, by definition, you are relying on historical older data, because when the garment maker is about to send a purchase order or fulfill purchase order of a brand, then the request is sent back to the fabric mill, which fabric was sent to them, and identify the yarn supplier. But when you track the orders back up the chain, the yarn that was produced, which is used in the garment being shipped today, the yarn was probably produced 6 to 9 months ago. So you're always sending and looking at historical unreliable data. And more importantly, in that approach, you never have integrity of inventory of the product, right? Because you're connecting the chain backwards. You never know whether the person had actually the authentic input material to produce that product at the first place, right? Now, fiber forwards traceability completely eliminates that, because you start with the point where the material is being produced, and you start capturing the product from that point itself through the digitization of the physical volume, right? Now that you cannot do when you look at traceability garment backwards. And fiber forward, you capture transactions real time, so it allows players to once a week, to upload transactions into the system. The data transactions are fresh, the data is very recent, and therefore it makes it much easier to implement. And overall, the integrity is much higher, because you know exactly that, okay, the spinner had the fiber and therefore he could produce the yarn, and the yarn guy actually shipped that yarn, and therefore the fabric mill had an inventory of let's say tencel cotton yarn or recycled polyester yarn, and therefore they could make the fabric, right? All of that is not possible if you look at tracking orders back.
Great, Amit. Thanks. I hope that it's now really clear why such kind of an approach is really the right one, and it really creates less work for all the brand and retailers who are ultimately paying for the whole supply chain. Another frequently asked question that we get often is how exactly these fiber coins are working. It's kind of a fancy name, but what they stand for and what's their practical value?
Yeah. So Fibercoins, I mean, first of all, it has nothing to do with cryptocurrency, right? So Fibercoins is essentially digitization of the physical volume at the point of origin. So 1 kg of sustainable fiber becomes 1 fiber coin. And what it does, you control the amount of certified material entering into the network, because you know exactly every kg that's shipped from the original manufacturer, you can tokenize it, and therefore you know all the total volume of authentic material entering into the network. And it's basically just creating a digital twin of the physical product at the point of origin. And as the product is transformed from one step to next step, fiber to yarn, yarn to fabric, fabric to garment, that digital twin is also passed along based on the composition of the yarn, the blend ratio, the GSM of the fabric. So there's certain algorithms that run to calculate the amount of certified material in the network. Yeah.
So great. In a nutshell, the Bitcoin technology is really helping us to avoid any cheating happening alongside.
Correct.
Great. Perhaps an important question for everybody: why a brand, a retailer, or why a supply chain partner should be part of that platform? What are the benefits for each of them individually? Could you share a bit more on that one?
Yeah, you mean for the brand or for the supply chain partners?
For the brand first, and then maybe also for the supply chain partners. I guess we have a wider audience, so let's make it as tangible.
Yes. So I think for the brand, it goes back to what we said, the 95% traceability gap. So most of the brands anyhow pay a premium for a sustainable product, and they want to be sure they actually receive what they pay for in terms of a sustainable product, right? So for the brand, it's very important to have that the traceability across supply chain, to lower the compliance risk, to lower the reputational risk for them when they buy, when they market a sustainable product at the point of sale, right? Because many times the whole point of actually having sustainable garments is to make the right claims at the point of sale. So that's what, for a brand, the story is, I think, quite clear. Most of them have also set corporate targets. They have annual sustainability and traceability targets which they need to deliver on over the next 3 to 5 years. Now, as far as supply chain players are concerned, I think the system can allow them, or any traceability platform will allow them to position themselves as an authentic supplier versus an unauthentic supplier. It allows them to differentiate in the market. It also gives them surety that the raw materials they use are indeed authentic and not from a dubious source. And also we create positive incentives for supply chain partners, with the work with fashion, good fashion fund. We also created positive incentives for them as well. Yeah.
And then perhaps another question from my side, quite interesting. I know that Lenzing, of course, is the first man-made ceramic producer to be on board of the Life platform. Could you talk a bit more about your plans to extend the network of raw materials? And with your work with Canopy, I guess there will be also some kind of a sustainability benchmark that needs to be met in order for the manufacturers to be eligible to join.
Yes. So with Canopy, we have set a minimum standard that only green shirt ranked players would be allowed to be onboarded into the system. So that sets the standard very high at the very starting point. You have to be minimum green shirt Canopy ranked. So I think that's fantastic. We are already starting work with other filament players in the cellulosic space, like Enka from Germany. We are expanding into wool and cashmere with Schneider Group, And with Textile Exchange, we are conducting trials in recycled polyester with some of the leading recycled polyester and filament suppliers in US, in Taiwan. So we're very quickly expanding into all of the key sustainable fibers. And I think once our system is ready also for what we're developing with eTrackIt for Textile Exchange, I think that would further expand the coverage into other fiber space as well. Yeah.
Great, exciting. So it looks promising that more and more
Yes.
raw material suppliers are coming on
Correct.
site.
Correct.
And how easy it's to get yourself registered on the system? What are the steps that one should take in order to start?
Yeah. So I think it just takes about it takes about 5 to 10 minutes to create your account on the TextileGenesis platform. It's pretty straightforward to actually to log into the system and to create your account. And then once you sign in, then essentially you have to register your manufacturing plant. You have to create your products as per our standard. And then essentially once you receive the inventory of the raw material, then you can process your output product, right? But you have to have inventory from the upstream supplier with the tokens passed along, and the tokens have to be sent originally by Lenzing, for example, or other sustainable fiber producer. So I think in terms of creating an account, it's a pretty straightforward process. And then essentially it's then about daily usage or weekly usage to drive adoption, but it's pretty user friendly the way we have designed the system. Yeah, because it allows transactions to be uploaded, and it decentralizes a lot of the ownership to the suppliers. There are training videos and modules at each and every step in the for each and every operation, so they can actually very easily learn by themselves how to use the system. Yeah.
Excellent, Amit. And something that you mentioned as part of the unique features of the platform is the ability to carry out forensic audits and also to upload credentials as well as certificates. Could you give a practical example how this could look like in real life, how a forensic audit could be triggered, and what a brand and retailer can see in terms of certificates for the supply chain? Something in that respect.
Yeah. So essentially, when the brand receives their garment at the when the purchase order is being fulfilled, ideally you want the supply chain to be already connected, and you want the brand to be able to understand whether a particular sample was forensically verified or not, and what was the outcome of that, right? So what the system allows is, if a product has been created on the system, let's say a fabric article is registered on the system, then if that fabric article a sample has been sent to the lab for verification, then the outcome of the audit becomes part of the history of that fabric article in terms of audit. So once that article is transformed into a garment and then shipped on to the brand, they not only see the full supply chain, but also whether the product was forensically verified and what was the outcome of that audit, right? Did it pass or did it not pass?
Great. And last question from my side, but maybe very hot in the room. How much it costs for a supply chain partner to join such kind of a platform? Is there any benefit if he do it now?
Yeah, so we keep the system for free for all the supply chain partners for next 2 years, so that it creates positive incentives for supply chain partners to join. Until December of 2022, it's free to join, and only from January 2023 we start charging a very nominal fees from the suppliers. Yeah.
So pretty much there is like nothing to lose, because they're not going to charge any money, but it's now the opportunity for them to really step up, show that they're willing to do transparent business and give it a try.
Correct. Yeah.
Sounds great. With that being said, maybe Shannon, back to you for hopefully some questions out of the audience.
Hi, and thank you both for a great presentation. We are now going to open it up to our audience for questions. We'll start with those submitted during the live presentation, but we continue to encourage our attendees on the line to submit questions. Our first question for Amit: Does a consumer need to install the app in order to scan the barcode and read the story of the product?
No, they don't have to. I mean, this can also be done, if they have a camera, an iPhone camera, they can just scan the barcode and have the data. But then the barcode is essentially nothing but the number that you see below the barcode, right? Now, the organization that issues that is called GS1. They're also introducing what is called a digital link, where within the barcode there's also a link, a web page link. So you can just use your normal camera, scan that code, and it will automatically take you to the page on the information. So absolutely, we want to make it as easy as possible. And of course, that's not easy when you have to download an app and open the app and then scan it, right? So the idea is to be able to use the camera as well to do that. Yeah.
That's great, thank you. And our next question is, how do you prevent fraud in your system?
Yes, so there are multiple ways to prevent fraud. First is that at the beginning point itself, we create integrity of the system through the digitization of the physical volume, right? So in the system, you will never have a scenario what you see in other cases where twice as much product is marketed versus actually produced, because there's no control to the amount of authentic material entering into the network. The second way we prevent fraud is we create a lot of business validations at each step in the supply chain, that the input raw material composition must match the output raw material composition, right? So for example, on our system, you cannot have 100% recycled polyester yarn and compose a fabric with 50-50 polyester cotton yarn. It's not possible with the fabric composition. If you use 100% polyester yarn, of course, the fabric will also be, the composition will be 100% polyester, right? So a recycled polyester, for example. So we do a lot of this business validations, which prevents that to happen. And the third layer is what we were discussing, this marker, the tracer, that you can send the sample to a lab, a physical lab, where they can verify the fiber and can issue a certificate, and then we can connect it to the history. So that prevents any fraud, because you can't claim a generic product as a branded product. Yeah. Shannon, yeah. So those are the three ways.
Great, thank you very much. Our next question is, is there equipment that should be installed at each processing point, such as incoming warehouse or outgoing warehouse?
No, we do not we do not require equipment to be installed, because practically speaking, it will be extremely expensive, and also maybe impractical, because given the fragmentation of the textile supply chain is highly fragmented. You have thousands and thousands of factories in Pakistan, in Bangladesh, Turkey, Vietnam, Sri Lanka, China. So I mean, there's just the physical challenge of getting this done is impossible. So what we require is that we capture the financial transaction, right? The actual financial transaction that happens between a spinner to a garment maker, and garment or fabric mill to the garment maker. Those financial transactions are captured through the PO and the invoice number, and that becomes, and we capture the specification of the product, and that is how we capture the right data. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And we had a follow-up question to your previous answer on the fiber makeups. Do you know which labs can test on these products?
Yeah, typically the labs is of the lab of the fiber producer itself, or the fiber maker. So you see the Simeon, they have a lab in Austria, I think also in Hong Kong. I heard recently also in India, where they can actually do the verification of the product, right? So the lab belongs to the fiber producer, who can then verify, Shannon, the actual underlying product itself, right? Sometimes you also have third-party labs. That is also possible, but there's no one specific lab, right? It really depends on the fiber maker, whether they do it in-house, within their own company, or they outsource maybe part of the testing.
Great, thank you. So we'll give the audience another minute or so to submit any other questions that they have. But Amit, would you let us know the best way that our audience members can reach you?
Sure. So I think they can go to TextileGenesis.com, www.textilegenesis.com, and we have basically contact us form there. They could actually reach out to us through contact us, and then myself or my team would then respond to them. I think that's the easiest way for the audience to reach out to us. Yeah.
Great, thank you. So we didn't have any additional questions come in, but I want to really thank you, Amit and Simeon, for speaking today. We really appreciate it. On that note, we are going to conclude today's webinar, but before we go, I just wanted to remind our audience that we will continue our Red, White, and What's New in Responsibly Made Fashion series next week for a review of Tree Climate, a collaborative collection by Concept 3 and Tencel. You can register for that on the USFIA website, so we hope to see you there. As always, if you have any additional questions, you can always reach out to USFIA directly at info@usfashionindustry.com. Thanks again for our audience for joining us and our speakers today, and we look forward to hosting you at the next USFIA event.
No, thank you. See you then. Yeah, thank you. Thanks. Bye.